Companion is a sci-fi horror comedy about an AI-powered android taking on a violent vacation. So there's no way that I can start this review other than by saying that if you haven't seen the official trailer or the 1-minute teaser for this movie, I would suggest avoiding them because they spoil some pretty big details. I'll try and do you a solid by doing what the trailer is supposed to do by giving you a general idea of what you're getting into with this movie without spoiling key plot points or pivotal pieces of dialogue. Since it's in the logline of the movie, I'll at least address that it's about an AI companion bot named Iris, played by Sophie Thatcher. She's taken on a getaway trip with her owner Josh, played by Jack Quaid, to spend some time with his friends at a lake house. Things take a gruesome turn, leading to a series of events that drive Iris to wanting her own independence. So this movie takes the played out premise in movies like Subservience or Afraid, where it's about people dealing with AI that's evil, and puts it on its head. We follow the AI and watch all these awful happenings through her eyes. She's a loyal device living in a corrupt world. It's honestly a long overdue take on an AI story that acknowledges the fact that technology is just evil when it's in the wrong hands. Sometimes. AI is something that's engineered with heavy safeguards, but of course that doesn't mean that those safeguards can't be reversed or tampered with. Beneath the sci-fi shenanigans, this movie is actually about relationship dynamics. It shines light on possessive partners who, in pursuit of having a perfect relationship, actually just want a companion who lives solely for them. It's molded into a sci-fi story by being about a fembot who quite literally lives in the service of her partner, Josh. But its statements about toxic love and the difficulties of remaining autonomous in relationships are written on the walls if you're really looking beneath the surface at all. It also makes statements about the undying nature of love, how romantic attachment is a visceral feeling that all conscious beings can succumb to and even become identified by. And consciousness is another interesting subject that is mentionable here. We live in a world where AI is technically not considered conscious, but through stories like this that depict AI as a walking, talking being with thoughts and feelings, it sort of challenges that ideology. It's easy to think that watching this because Sophie Thatcher really kills it here. It would be too easy of a trap to fall into for her to just play this character like a stereotypical android, but she doesn't do that. She acts like a mostly realistic person. She's still just a touch too optimistic in her demeanor most of the time, which feels out of place when you consider the vibes of the room. But that slight touch was honestly perfect. It sells her as being just slightly semi-realistic, but she's still realistic enough that we can sympathize with her. Setting aside the symbolism and depth, this movie on the surface is a horror comedy. It's pretty funny if you like dark comedies. I've personally laughed out loud a few times. The movie takes no shame at all in using the hell out of smash cuts for comedic value. Those and the flashbacks and imagined situations depicted on screen made for some really wonderful moments. Horror-wise, there are some graphic scenes, but nothing too over the top. To drive this point home, I saw this movie with a friend who thought the substance was pretty gross, but she was able to tolerate this just fine. The movie has a couple moments that focus heavily on some of the side characters, which seemed strange at the time, but then as the story progressed, it started to make sense. There are some surprises in this movie. I personally saw some of the revelations coming a mile away, but there was actually one twist that I did not see coming that honestly I really should have been looking for. There were some things in this movie that had me going, For starters, the second act just has an absurd amount of info dumping. None of the dialogue felt inauthentic or anything. It was just the amount of back-to-back-to-back scenes where characters are just spilling the beans on everything that just made the whole second act feel off. I will also never not mention this. I am personally sick and tired of the played out horror film trope of our characters being isolated in the woods. That might not be the most offensive horror cliche to some of you. I'm personally sick of it. In the end, I couldn't help but think about some of the loose ends. I'd hate to call them plot holes, but it's hard to ignore certain characters and certain phone calls that were made that would realistically leave people asking questions. And throughout the movie, and even now, I just couldn't shake the fact that, again, the trailer just showed too much. Some of the coolest moments were in there, and plus there's this one line of dialogue that just utterly spoils one of the big twists. Whoever made that trailer really messed up. Like, the whole first act would have been so much different if I had just seen that first 1-minute teaser and not the official trailer. And just to clarify, it's kind of hard for me to ignore those trailers when they're literally being played in the previews for other movies that I'm seeing. I know people say this all the time, but this really is a movie that's worth going in blind for. It's funny, it's gruesome, and I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy this just a little bit more by relating to its protagonist. I'd like to think that anyone who's ever been in a relationship where they felt like they were being treated like a companion rather than a partner will relate on some level. It's a pretty decent movie overall. If you're looking for a horror film to see in theaters this weekend that you can have a little bit of fun with, It's worth checking out. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Nickel Boys.